Hi everyone, I'm just another Bernie tuber and I have a question for you. By what criteria do you choose who you'll vote for? Among politically active citizens, the answer most will give is that they've studied the issues and researched the candidates and settled on the one with whom they most agree. This isn't the wrong answer so much, but the problem with our voting criteria is that often it's subjective. I want to offer a more objective, ironclad methodology for choosing your candidates so that you select the one who is more likely to deliver on the promises they made while campaigning. To understand how to do that, let me first show you how the average voter and the politically active voter currently judge candidates. Number 1. The purity test. Voters have particular issues they care about, and among the politically active, they're going to sift through a candidate's words dating back years, looking for the consistency in their statements then and now. I find this approach to be cynical because if a candidate has changed their mind, the next questions will be, when did they change their mind and why? The cynicism comes in when we assume that they only changed their position for political gain, as if they're just reading the tea leaves and going with the flow. There must be room for people to come around. If you've never changed your mind about something, it's an indicator of intellectual stagnancy. 2. The record test. Similar to the purity test, the record test is a binary "did you vote for this issue or against it" question. Unfortunately, the political system doesn't allow for that level of nuance. Large, must-pass bills often come with amendments that grant funds for social programs or other vital functions people depend on. Even if you don't like the overarching bill, as a congressperson you'll find yourself voting for it often because of the good things included in the bill, but get credited or blamed for it all. In the case of Joe Biden versus Bernie Sanders, the infamous crime bill received both senators' votes. The distinction is Sanders railed against the bill but supported the domestic violence prevention aspect of the bill. Biden wrote the crime bill. The record test is inherently flawed in this sense. 3. Relatability. Who would you rather have a beer with, John Kerry or George W. Bush? On its face, it sounds like a terrible way to choose a leader, and in a way it is. But there is some logic to it. You probably want someone in office who thinks the same way you do. Isn't that what elections are for, after all? But it falls apart when you consider this. You don't know what you don't know. Any leader is going to face challenges they don't expect, and may not have even known that these would be issues. Now imagine you get blindsided with a problem and your first thought is, I didn't know this was a thing. And your drinking buddy says, yeah, me neither. 4. Identity. Similar to relatability, identity speaks to shared experiences and subsequently shared worldviews. Someone who has been through it with me will likely understand better how to help someone like me. But identity breaks down on several fronts. For instance, what if we are siblings growing up in a middle-class home where the parents preach education and excellence, and then the economy tanks and they lose the house? What becomes our view of education? In the same house, we may come away with wildly different takeaways. You might say, get a good education and choose a safer career that will always be in demand. I might say our parents did all this, played by the rules, and still lost. So why should I? The second issue with identity politics is that it presumes ownership of my vote, as though all I am can be boiled down to this one aspect of my existence. It's insulting, actually, as it shifts the onus on you to earn my vote to me having to fall in line behind whatever you say. Kinda like a dictator. 5. Familiarity. This is a selection trait more common among uninformed voters. The name they've heard before is most likely to get their vote. This can be dangerous for the public because name recognition can often be media-driven. Given the media's conflicting ties with corporate powers, there is a perverse incentive for them to cover a candidate who most agrees with their parent companies and largest advertisers. 6. Electability. Similar to familiarity, the electability factor can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. The media drives the narrative that a candidate is most electable against this or that incumbent, even though the public enthusiasm may not be with that candidate. Take, for instance, the 2012 Republican primaries. Mitt Romney was not loved by the public, but was seen as most able to go against President Obama. But while that narrative held, on an almost weekly basis, one candidate after another was getting a bounce in the polls, followed by close scrutiny, followed by a crash. Romney secured the nomination, but lost in the general election. In my time following politics, I've never once seen the quote-unquote electable candidate actually win the presidency. Maybe the party's nomination, but not the White House. So now that we've seen the flawed ways candidates are often chosen, let's consider 3 criteria that get us to a better candidate more likely to accomplish what we elected them to do. Number 1, incentives test. With this criterion, you're looking for the candidate whose fortunes most depend on the people they hope to govern. When a candidate is funded entirely by the people, the candidate is accountable entirely to the people. The reverse is also true. This is why a candidate, for instance, Pete Buttigieg, cannot be trusted is because his bread gets buttered in wine caves with billionaires. He is accountable to them no matter what he says publicly. 2. Judgment. This criterion allows voters to examine the candidate's instincts. Especially as president, time is constrained, and the president won't have time to study up on something or learn much of anything while essentially putting out fires. Their instincts are what's going to decide life and death issues, often on the fly. 3. Responsiveness to the people. The ability to bend to the will of the people is important, but must be counterbalanced with judgment. Too much democracy can lead to ultimately harmful decisions, while too little democracy shuts people out of the process and disregards their knowledge and wisdom. A candidate whose incentives are aligned with the people is more likely to bend to their will. This also gives the candidate freedom from their past record if it's less than stellar. So those are my 3 criteria for selecting better candidates, regardless of the level of the office. While I myself am a Bernie Sanders supporter, these criteria are useful regardless of party and can gain us better Republicans and better Democrats who are more aligned with the needs of the people. I appreciate your time watching this, and I hope that if you learned something from this, please consider liking and subscribing and sharing this video as I begin to ramp up production for this channel. But more than anything, don't just sit on this knowledge. Go do something with it.